Okay, how you going, YouTube? RAM replacement, things of that nature, which there's probably a lot of videos out there that'll tell you different things. I don't recommend handling it by the pins, but I mean, to be honest, most of the stuff's just older technology, so I mean, most of it had a bit of a rough trot anyway, regardless. Which this is DDR RAM. This is an older laptop that I'll probably end up selling. I won't sell it for a drastically high price, but it's just a basic P4, Intel Inside, Pentium 4, keyboard and everything else. It works anyway. So at the moment, it's got 512 worth of RAM in there, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure it has 512. If it hasn't got 512, then it's going to have 512 in it shortly. Okay, so things you should remember. Remove your battery. It's sometimes there's a little lock on the battery, depending on the situation. Take your battery out. Unscrew and screw on the compartment you want to take out. If there's several screws, and normally depending on that section there's for the what's it for? Hard drives. So yeah, that's for hard drive. That's for your hard drive. All right, so unscrew, take that section off, place it aside, such things of that nature. Grab sticker RAM, it's 512, whack your sticker RAM in, insert. I mean, look, you don't have to be overly gentle with it, but push it down and it'll clip into place. Once it clips into place, it's got locked down and everything else. If you want to take it out again, just flip those two clips in there, push down, simple as that. There's also a wireless card here as well. I won't try and take that out, but I will take the hard drive bay out and show you exactly what the hard drive bay looks like. I think there's a bit of battery power in it, so hopefully I can boot it up and show you what it's supposed to look like anyway. A little bit. Try and pry it up a little bit. Okay, so your hard drive, and normally your hard drives come with these brackets if they're in a laptop. Depending on the situation, it's normally good to get your hands on these brackets most of the time. Really helps the situation. Pull that down normally, like normally you go to a tab, and you just pull it down, and out comes the hard drive. Things like that. That's an old ID hard drive, obviously not SATA, but now put it back in, line it up again, and really clip it back in like that, and put the tab back down. Oops. Like that. And I mean, this is for this laptop. Like most laptops have, the problem is a lot of laptops come apart in different ways. Normally you have to look up the particular model you're working on in most cases, or you have to have an idea of what model, how the model comes apart and things like that, depending on the laptop, of course. Oops. Okay. Oops. Oh, there we go. And you screw that back in like so. There we go, that one. Screw that in like so. And we've obviously got our memory back in there, so place your back cover on. Try to line these up if you can help it. Most of the time it's not always the easiest thing to do, but if you can help it, yeah. Once you line everything up, screw that back down like so. That's just a simple case of that. Put your battery back in. Flick your lock switch for the battery into the lock position, like so. That locks it in place. Flip your laptop around. Open up your laptop. Push your power button. Push your power button to wait for it to boot. Let's see, booting and everything else. Now, once it boots, it's obviously going to give you. It might give you a BIOS prompt, depending on the situation. I have got XP. I think this already had an XP on it to start with. Just have to refurbish it basically. So I probably won't put. I don't know whether I'll put XP on it. I might put Windows 7. I'll see what I'll end up putting on it, but something maybe even Linux. I don't know. I'm thinking something along those lines basically. So yeah, copyright Microsoft Corporation. Now, replacing keyboards and stuff can be a bit more difficult depending on the model of the laptop you're using, of course, depending on the laptop you're working on too. Refurbishing them, refixing them up, getting them in the right position, getting everything in the right position basically can be a little bit difficult. Saying that, this one doesn't look overly difficult because it's got these two front panel areas here. Maybe a little bit of prying. There might be some, maybe get some prying tools. But I mean, I work on laptops on and off. I don't work on them all the time. I work on a combination of laptops. Also might be working a little bit on like just stuff that electronics I'll fit around myself with, just out of experimentation, curiosity really. So let's see here. So what do we got? You can see that the laptop's booted up, and we'll go to the main screen, properties, and there we go. So obviously this only had 256 memory, which I said had 512, but I had not checked it since for a while, so I wasn't sure. Actually, that could be related to video memory, so that might actually just be a little bit of memory off. So that's fine. That might actually, I think, with some of these other laptops, I used to use the video memory, the RAM as video memory. So yeah, that's got 1 gig almost, 896. Megabytes. Now, could be. Good question. Anyway, 2.8 gigahertz. This is basic P4, but I mean, mucking around with computers. I mean, desktop stuff's a bit more bigger. You just more, more throughput when you're dealing with it. Shouldn't they? I'll grab a hard drive. It's a lot bigger, a lot easier to deal with in that sense of things. Hardware stuff. So that one's fine. Wireless network has been detected there. It's been there. So yeah, I mean it's basically the way it works. Now aside from that, okay, so that's how to install RAM and things like that. Recommendations I would give: anti-static bands. I don't use them all the time. I will use them in some cases if I feel the equipment might be very sensitive to it, but I mean rarely do you find you really need to, or the equipment is that sensitive that it just dies when you put a bit of static shock. But saying that, the area I work in has a like a tile plastic, well not plastic but we call it vinyl floor anyway, so yeah, it's pretty easy to clean. It's pretty easy to keep the static electricity away when you're on vinyl. Not so easy when you're on carpet, but vinyl, yeah, not an issue. Anyway, that's how to change RAM. What are some other examples of things I can do while I'm here? Placing hardware in different things. So that's a laptop. Let's see what else I can muck around with while I'm here. So let's see, for example, I'll grab a laptop. Not a laptop, what am I saying? I'll grab a desktop motherboard. Basically, I'm working with a desktop motherboard. Now, got some DDR2 RAM, a video card maybe a PCI card. I mean, most of these will actually be inside a case. Stuff like this will be inside a case. It'll overlap, basically, in the sense you've got PCI Express or otherwise. I mean, this is a board that I may reuse, I may not reuse, depending on my quota of parts. Now, normally with your motherboards, I mean, you can have it over the edge. So I'll move that back a bit. So I've got some room. So say for example, you want to put so we'll move that. So say for example, now I mean it's very rare, like I mean surfers like this, like that, that's okay. But normally when you're putting PCI cards and things like that in, they normally just clip in. They clip in and basically will sit flush with the mother, flush with the case. You know, putting PCI cards in, for example, things like that, push in most of the time. You may find it's a little bit tight with areas, in particular some areas where the case is particularly flush at the bottom of the board. RAM, for example, try to line up your slots. Basically, line up your slots with the to match up with each other. So slots into those areas. I have seen somebody do this, and it really amazed me that somebody could actually do it. But they managed to put RAM in, and you probably didn't see me doing that, but they managed to put RAM in, but they managed to force a new slot into it because it wasn't actually the right RAM. It was, instead of being DDR1, DDR2, it was DDR1. So basically they forced a new slot into it. Now I grab some DDR1, for example, in the sense of lining up these two, they don't line up with DDR and DDR1. Now with DDR3 is the exact same. DDR3 doesn't line up with DDR2 either. So the thing that I say to people is, you know, try not to, I mean, there's people literally hammering things in to try and get RAM back into a board, and I'm like, no, that's not what you do. And I have seen people do it. I have seen people make so many mistakes with doing stupid things like that. Sad state of affairs when it happens, but you know, I've seen somebody do that and actually managed to get a new slot in the RAM and turn the board on and fry the RAM. Went up in a puff of smoke. Now, you also got different types of RAM too, like for example, you've got low profile stuff here, which I can put that in here. Flip it around, flicks in there like that. That flicks in there, so you've got RAM, you've got all your cards and everything else. Of course, your CPU, with your CPU brackets. For Intel, it's a case of, most of the time it's in case of a socket like this, or the modern sockets. This is 775, this is down from the current socket. Well, the sockets are pretty much all the same, like the same design. They'll basically might have a few extra pins and a few extra things that you would normally not have. The only time they changed was back in the DDR days, where they actually had pins on the back. AMD, on the other hand, has pins on the back for its CPUs. On the other hand, the pins are actually on the motherboard for their 775 socket and such Intel sockets. And then you got, you know, SATA, obviously you plug your SATA cable in here, you got power cables, you've got different indicators on the motherboard as well, main power to the board, heatsink to keep things cool for the south and north bridge and everything else, and all the other bits and pieces, sound, networking, USB, onboard video if it has that option, floppy drive. Oh no, actually this does not have a floppy, does it? It might have a floppy. Yes, it does. It has a floppy drive. It has a floppy connector right here. Also has a IDE connector as well. You'll find a lot of these things are vanishing now from most motherboards, floppy connectors and IDE connectors.